Oh man, I think I might be onto something, my friends. We're going to take a look at the bucket strategy with a TSP first and foremost. So we're going to dive into this because the TSP goes back to 1988 and we have nice round numbers to use. And the TSP is basically the indexes essentially. And so this can be interesting. This is going to be very interesting to look at. So what I've done, and I'm gonna backdate this with Wellington as well, going back to the beginning of time for Wellington. I'm not ready to do that yet, but I've always found the TSP interesting because it is reflective of the current interest rates and whatnot, as well as the C Fund is the S&P 500 index. So the TSP with the low fees, the fact they have a G Fund, the government bond is a guaranteed government bond fund, and we're going to kind of compare that. That's going to be our cash bucket, like a certificate of deposit bucket, so to speak. Looking at the C Fund, which is the S&P 500. So while this is specific to the TSP, and if you're not a military or federal employee, you don't have access to it, the same thing can be used potentially now. And I haven't done a deep dive relative to the G Fund because the G Fund is our bucket that's going to give us a decent rate of return on our cash money. But let's just dive into it. So the premise is that instead of doing my 3-year buckets where you're just taking from the cash, essentially what we're going to do is whatever has done better, we're going to take it from. Does that make sense? So we're going to take our distributions to whatever has done better. So it's still a 2-bucket approach. G Fund is our cash bucket. C Fund is our stock bucket. We're taking, what do I got? 2 years. We're always going to have 2 years of income, always, at all times. In the G Fund or the cash bucket, always going to have 2 years of income in the cash bucket, and we're going to have the rest in the stock bucket. So in this case, we're starting with a $100,000 portfolio. We're going to have 12. We're taking 6% a year out. We're going to say the guy or the lady needs $6,000 a year. So we're going to start with $12,000 in the G Fund, $88,000 in the C Fund. Does that make sense? And we're going to use real world numbers from inflation, from the C Fund performance, and from the G Fund as well. And this is just a starting point. I mean, literally, I'm doing this, and then I'm going to report it to you because I find it interesting. I'm actually going to do a book on this. I want to get a book out on the bucket strategy because I like it a lot. I'm a big fan. I did an email to my subscribers earlier today about the mental accounting and how just prevalent it is, and the need to really have something that you can kind of understand. That way you'll take action. So this is going to be interesting. I liked what I found out. Now I will grant you that. Well, I mean, we did start in the 1988. That's as far back as the TSP goes, and so it's in the middle of a bull market for sure. And so that could, some people could throw darts against that. And I get it. So we're going to, obviously we're going to back test this a little bit too to see what happens if we started in 2000. But let's just go for now. You ready? So let's see what we got here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the tspdatacenter.com. And this is a .com. It's not from the Fed. So it's directly from, it says TSP Data Center. I don't even know who these guys are. But this isn't the government. They're just using the returns of the GF. So what we're doing here is we're looking at the CD rates, historical CD rates from 1984 to 2016 to compare them to the G Fund and, of course, a 10-year Treasury. So let's take a look here. In 1988, we got 87, 88, we got 89, 88. 1-year CD paying about 7.5. 91 to 1-year CD paying 7.3. So what was a G Fund doing? And what I say, 7.3. Yeah, it's about the same thing, man. Isn't that interesting? Let me just read that again. 1990, 1-year CD was 7.95. Okay, in 1990, the G Fund was up 8.1 or 8.9. Excuse me. All right, so let's go to 1995. The 1-year CD was paying 5.22. The G Fund 7.03, so a little bit higher than the 1-year CD. Let's see here. 1-year CD in 2003 is 1.05. The G Fund in 2003 was 4.11, which is going to be more in line with the 5-year CD. All right, so that would be a little bit of interesting because that would tell me then you would still want the G Fund. You'd want to have a intermediate government bond fund, and maybe not the cash. I'm pretty comfortable with the CD, frankly. There's no other way around it. So if we go down here, we got a 1-year CD paying 0.23 and was that 2014, and we have the 2013, we got 1.89. So not a huge difference. I don't think it's going to have that much of effect. I'm actually pretty comfortable using a 10-year Treasury government bond fund without question. That's interesting to me, though. Okay, so good. So people say, oh, but you're not really using a cash because you're using 10-year Treasury. Well, if you look at a fund like the Vanguard Ginnie Mae, you can have access. In fact, Vanguard used to, or at least USA's Ginnie Mae did, you used to be able to write checks against it. I don't know if you still can or not, but that's how liquid those accounts were. I'm pretty comfortable. Yeah, they did have a couple down years, not much. But I'm pretty comfortable using a Ginnie Mae fund for our equivalent of the G Fund here, for sure. Or a 10-year, or even intermediate government bond fund, I don't care. Even if you want to do CDs, doesn't bother me. The issue with the CDs, of course, is they're not liquid. Anyway, so let's dive into this. This is going to be fun. So, again, we're starting. Let me see if I can't make this a little bit bigger for you old folks like me who've got bad eyes and bad ears. And that's too big. Let's just deal with this. I'm just going to explain it then. All right, so what we're doing here. We got $100,000 we're starting with. We're saying we need $6,000 a year, or in this case, 6% a year. And we're going to adjust it each and every year with inflation. So we're starting the first year with 6%, $6,000 distribution off your $100,000 portfolio. Does that make sense? Now, what am I doing is I'm assuming you've got the cash to cover the first year. All right. So basically, we're saying your end of the year, you need 6,000. You need 6% of your initial $100,000, 6%, which is $6,000. But because you already have enough cash to cover that year, we might be starting a little bit, in a nice way. You always want to retire enough cash to cover your first year expenses. So we're assuming that happens. So essentially, at the end of year one, your $6,000 grew with inflation, and this is real inflation numbers, 4.1. In 1988, inflation was 4.1. I got that from the Robert Schiller over at Yale stuff. He's got just an immaculate spreadsheet thing. It's great. So your $6,000 that you spent in the first year has grown to $6,246. You need that. Your $6,246 grew 4.8% to $6,546 in the next year. Does that make sense? So we're using real live inflation numbers, G Fund, 10-year Treasury. Both those years averaged 8.81, 8.9. So what's happening here is we're saying what has done better on any given year, and we're taking it from that. So we're starting with 2 years expenses in our G Fund, our intermediate government bond fund, and the rest in stock fund. And again, this is just a C fund. And we're saying we're going to take 6% a year. Does that make, not 6% a year, 6% the first year, and then adjusting that with inflation each and every year thereafter. Let me just clarify that. 6% the first year, adjusting it with real live inflation numbers every year thereafter. I got a frog in my throat. Excuse me. All right. So whatever fund the bucket did better, that's where we're taking the money from at the end of the begin the next year. So in this case, in 1988, we started with $12,000 in the G Fund. The G Fund is up 8.81. The C Fund is up 11.84. So what we're doing is the G Fund, $12,000, we times that by the 8.81%, and it gives us an end of year value of $13,057. The C Fund, on the other hand, we started with $88,000. But because it did better than G funds, what we have to do, we have to take 88, all right? We got to times it by the rate of return we have and subtract from this amount here, the 6246. So we're taking the beginning of the year value, adding it to, or timesing it by the rate of return, in this case 1.1184, and then we're subtracting the amount we need to cover our following year. I hope that makes sense. So again, we're starting with 6,000. We got 6,000 in cash and 100,000 in our portfolio. 100,000 in our portfolio, so the 6,000 is going to cover us for that year. 100,000, 88,000 is going to be attributed to stocks. 12,000 is going to be attributed to the cash bucket, the 2-bucket strategy, because we're always going to have at least 2 years of cash in that account, in the bucket account, in the first bucket. All right. So the following year, again, we are up 31.13. So we take our trusty calculator and we say, okay, we ended the year at 92,173. What we did is we said 92,173 times 1.31 minus the amount we needed, which was $6,546. That left us with $114,229. On the cash bucket, same thing happened. 13,057 times by the 81%. So we're left with 14,208. Now in 1990, when the world was getting worried about Saddam and going to war, the stocks fell 3.15%. So in this case, we weren't taking any money from the portfolio to live on. In fact, we took it from this portfolio, the cash portfolio. So what happens here? We started the year 14,208. All right, so 14,208, which is D4. We times that by the 8.9% that we got, which is C5, but we had to take $6,899. That makes sense. So it left us with only $8,573. So whatever did better, we had to take. In this case, the first bucket did better than the second bucket. Thus, we took that money that we needed, this $6,899, from the first bucket. But it only left us with $8,573, which is just a little bit over what we need, all right, because we need $6,899. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking this with the need that we have, $6,899, and I'm timesing that by 2, and I'm dumping it into the G Fund, and I'm going to take it from the C account. That's confusing, I get it, but think about it. You ended the year with $8,573. You say, oh man, that's not going to do it because I need $6,899 the following year. But I need to have 2 years at all times, 2 years covered in the first bucket. So I'm taking $6,899, I'm timesing that by 2, which gives me $13,799, and then I'm going to add it to the G bucket, or in this case, the first bucket. So at the end of the day, we're taking our $8,500. So here we go. We're taking our $8,573 that we have. We're adding it to 2 times the cash that we need for the 2 years. We need at least 2 years of coverage, and we're timesing it by the rate of return we got in 1991, which is 8.15. So now we're left with $24,195. So that's more than 2 years of coverage, and we're always going to have any time you got to keep a structured formula here. So anytime the first bucket drops below 2 years of income, you add 2 years of income to the bucket, regardless of what you have. So now we have more than 3 years of income. That's fine, because that's what you want to do. You want to take 2 years of income added. And what you'll see here is we got a bold here. That means that is a year that the market did better on the first bucket than the second. And the red is the year we took the distributions. We had to add the bucket. All right, so going over here, we did the same thing. We said, okay, well, in this case, we had to reduce this bucket by $13,799. So what we do is we start the year with what we had before. In that case is $110,000. We subtract out that $13,799. Then we times it by the amount of return that we got, 1.307, and then we subtract the amount of money we need to live on. So in this case, we have $119,000 left after taking $13,000, dumping it into the first bucket, and taking our distribution that we needed in terms of living on. I hope that makes sense. Then we keep doing that. So basically, we have in 1994, when the Fed was raising, the market on the C Fund was only up 1.33. And the bonds are up 7.22. The G Fund was. I got to check that to see what the 10-year Treasury does. Because, not 10-year Treasury, the Ginnie Mae, I don't know. Bonds got knocked around a little bit in 1994. Not much, but a little bit. And so then we're taking that. And you can see what's going on here. So basically we have, in this case, we ended the year 27,537. The previous year. But because 1994 we did better, well, we had to take 7,825 from the portfolio. So what we do is we take 27,537 from the year before, times that by the rate of return we got, and subtract by the amount we need, and that gives us $21,700 left, which is still more than 2 years of income. Right? As long as we have over 2 years of income, we don't need to replace any from the C bucket or the second bucket. We just let it roll. In this case, same thing, because we're underwhelmed. We did worse than the first bucket. We just take our $125,000, times it by the year return of 1.33, and just gives us a simple return of $127,000. All right, so we keep doing that until we hit 2000. And again, 2000 is when we have another year where the first bucket did better than the second bucket in 2000. I'm not going to explain all this, but what happens is here in 2001, because we're taking these distributions from the first bucket to pay the bills, we do not have more than 2 years of living expenses in the first bucket at the end of 2001. So we have to add $18,711. And again, how do we get $18,711? We times that year's expenses that have been adjusted with inflation by 2. And again, we started with 6% in the first year, and we're adjusting with real live inflation by 2. And I forgot, I probably didn't focus enough on the inflation, but in this case, inflation was 2.8. The next year is 1.6. And then we have to take that 18,711 out of the second bucket. And what you'll see here, we have another bad year. So basically in the second bucket now, we're like, man, we got crushed by 22%. But what happens is we started the year at 300,000, but we had to reduce our amount by the amount the first bucket needed to make sure they have over 2 years cash. And then we got hit by a 23% decline. And so now the previous year, 300,000 minus the 18,711 minus the 77, minus the 23%, we're only down to 219 when all is said and done. But again, the first bucket still has more than 2 years expenses because we have to make sure there's more than 2 years expenses. 2008 comes along. Again, that's in the red means we had to add a bucket. Red, we had to add a bucket, and you can see what happens here. So, and when all's said and done, now again, this is starting 1988. I don't know what's going to look like when we start in 2000. We'll get a shot here in just a second. When all's said and done, though, at the end of 2018, the first bucket has 41,320 in there because we had to add 26,510. All right, so we ended 2018 with only 14,810, which is not more than 2 years above what we need. But we had to we took 26,510, which is 2 years of the income we need. And so we added to that the 14,810 plus the 26,510. So we begin the year 2019 at 41,320. We ended the year at 2018 at 514,917, but we got to put money back into the first bucket. And so what we do here is we say, okay, what happens here? We don't know what the returns are going to be, so we start 2019 with $488,000. So we not only were able to crush it when it comes to returns or income, because again, we started with 6% in 1988, and not only were we able to easily have that with a real live inflation, but we have basically a little bit more than $500,000 left. That's pretty good. So again, that might just be the positive sequence of returns. We'll play this again and see how it shakes out when we start in a down year. But this might be a good strategy. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the Wellington Fund year over year, do the exact same thing, and we'll see how that shakes out. And I'm going to write a book on this. I think it's pretty interesting, and we shall see. So, all right. So stay tuned for more. I'd love to hear your comments. Smash the like button, and we'll see you next time.